Hello there. My guest this week on the Long Form podcast is Annet Uwizeye, the founder of both A.Wize Media as well as Nano Studios Africa. Annet Uwizeye, welcome to the Long Form.
Thank you. Thanks, Sunny.
So,
Yeah.
what does it feel like to be a founder of two media companies?
Well, I can't say it feels any particular way, but it's very telling of a journey. It's telling of some ambitions, and I think the people who've worked with us can testify more to what it feels like to work with those two companies. Yeah.
And so what's the difference between the two?
So I'm sure you're referring to A.Wize Media and Nano Studios.
Yes.
So one was created about 10 years ago and the other about 5 years ago. And out of different needs and out of different situations within the industry, for myself as at that time a budding filmmaker, producer, writer. So the initial, the company that's, that got us started was A.Wize Media. And when I say us, is every time we have teams that come together to make a production under this particular production company, they form part of that company at that particular time. But the idea of having a company is that when you have clients and you've got a big project, monetarily, technically, a complex project, usually it's better to work under a company, registered, fully tax compliant. So the kinds of jobs that you can't qualify for without a company if you're working, say, as a freelance, anything. Yeah. So that was created for that. So every once in a while, we take it out of the shelves, dust it off, and produce something complex with the company. Otherwise, most of the time, we're working as freelancers. Okay. Then Nano Studios is a facility, it's a space, a home to filmmakers and people from the general creative space. And that was created around 2018, and it has had a journey of its own, I can say. Yeah.
So talking about journeys, I want to kind of go a few years back. And this is really the first long form question. The first one was a bit more of an introductory note. So you have had a very interesting academic career, right? So it's not like, you did not start on one thing and end with that thing. You kind of started in one thing and then ended up in a totally different field. So the question that I'd like to ask is, how did a first-year student of accounting science in 2001 end up with a Bachelor of Technology in Motion Picture Production in 2010? I mean, I've heard of career changes and career pivots, but that's quite a major one that you had. I would like you to take us back all those years and walk us through that academic decision.
Maybe just a slight correction. 2005 is when this decision was made. Graduating from high school, having a sense of, the world is my oyster. Having been born out of parents who were exiled, who are now walking into a country that's also promising, so much, so many aspirations were benching on that generation. Now for us, we almost had this oyster a bit more open.
Mm.
We could dream a bit more, but still within the realities of what the economy was like, of the industries that were actually functioning or available for opportunity. So deciding to jump from accounting into film
Mm.
happened in a series of moments, in a series of, they like to call them aha moments.
Mm.
Realizing that whatever it is I will do with my career, it's essentially what I'll be doing with my life.
Yeah.
When you do an 8 to 5 job, this employer has the best part of your day, and they have a very big percentage of the best part of your life.
Yes.
Literally. So just realizing that whatever it is I'll choose to do, it's not a 5-year thing, a 10-year thing. It's a lifetime.
Mm.
Almost. So I asked myself, what is it that I can do that will stand the test of time?
Mm.
What will stand the test of life?
Mm.
There's ups and downs. Will that career path, will I still be passionate down the line? Will I still fight for that despite everything? So I happened to stumble into a very big Hollywood production at that time in South Africa, around 2004, 5, I can't recall, but just walked onto set, the first movie set I'd walked into.
Do you remember what movie it was?
Yeah, Hotel Rwanda.
Yeah.
So it was shot in Johannesburg, by the way, and just looking back at everything that movie represents today, this is where you understand the power of film. To build or to destroy or to direct or misdirect or to inspire, or it's film is very powerful, and that was, I guess, also one of the reasons I decided to take that journey. But I walked onto the set of Hotel
You just
Rwanda,
walked.
not knowing it's Hotel Rwanda.
So
Yeah.
just again, this is
Yeah,
really
yeah.
interesting to me. So you were in class, and then or
Yeah,
living
well,
your life.
yeah, trying to
Yeah.
kickstart this accounting.
Yes, this accounting
Yes,
journey, right?
yeah.
You're thinking about
Yeah. And thinking
credits
about
and debits and all that stuff.
exactly.
And then you walk. So where was this? Take us to that. Was it in Joburg? Was it in Pretoria? Where was the film set? And when you talk about walking into a film set, onto a film set, in my head, I'm thinking a film set must be, an extremely controlled space that no one can just, there are guards, and because they're Hollywood stars, I mean, it was Don Cheadle and all these big guys. So how does a young Annette just find herself in that space, probably without any credentials?
Nothing.
Yes.
Nothing. So I happen to know Johannesburg better than this other friend of mine that had an invitation to take up a role in this production. No one knew what it was called. And many times productions can conceal the name of or the title of the film for one reason or another. It was, as far as I would recall, we didn't have access to that information. It was just a movie set. There was money to be made. There's young people, and they're calling on people from East Africa.
Yeah.
East African looking people.
Yes.
That's the brief. You don't know much.
Yes.
So, and they put an age group, and they're looking maybe for particular types of actresses or actors, but looking for particular types of age groups, just for different roles. And I escort her, or I take her to Johannesburg, as I was more familiar with it, and she, leave her at the gate. As I was walking away, someone would call a casting director in the film industry, calls me over and says, "Listen, we're short of, or we still need more actors, and we need more extras." So I didn't know what extras were. It's funny looking back, that was probably the first film education I was getting. Still diehard, hoping to be this chartered accountant
Yeah.
one day.
Mm.
But again, sometimes a career calls you.
Mm.
Others will call it a calling.
Yes.
But that was the initial time we were calling. But we get there, drop her off, and I totally ended up hating the experience.
Mm.
I was like, you know, I'm going to go back, actually work very hard and become a very rich accountant.
So what did you hate so much about it?
It was a whole day affair.
Mm.
It was tiring and they paid peanuts.
Why was it tiring?
When I say peanuts, it's because extras don't make, let me say it this way. Extras, the money you make as an extra compared to the amount of hours you're working, sometimes if it's an entry job opportunity or level for, say, a budding actress, that's okay. But I think I had my sights set elsewhere. So that was peanuts for me.
Yes.
Someone else who had their career path sorted out in the industry, they would know why they're there. But I spent the whole day, it was almost a 10-hour or so day, carrying a bag. I was a passerby in front of Don Shiddle's house.
Yes.
Passerby,
So
coming
back
from the market.
Yeah.
And we took so many takes of that and other market scenes, carrying a child and a bag of, I think it was potatoes, in this outfit. And if I tell you what part of the movie I was in, you won't even identify me. I'll just tell you I was there and I'm that dot there, you know?
Yeah.
So it was not worth it for me at that point. But when you join the dots, that was a very key moment. So I went home, didn't even, and I guess people, but I didn't even get home that night. We closed so late. I camped out at a Congolese family's house. They were also acting in it. Never met them before.
Yeah.
Stayed and couch surfed for the night, and then made my way back to Johannesburg. My friend had a bigger role. She stayed in a hotel, got paid such great money. She was, I think, a receptionist in the hotel. Yeah. So that
Hotel
was
Rwanda.
in Hotel Rwanda.
Okay,
She was
not-
a receptionist.
So
Yeah.
you can
So she
actually
got
see-
a better role. You can see her face. So in that way, she's paid more.
Do you remember the peanuts you were paid?
It was in rands, but I don't remember. It was maybe not in. Well, was it 100 rand? I think it was like
That would be what, 20K?
at that time. It was like 100 rand or 80 rand.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was maybe. Anyway.
Oh well.
But it wasn't much.
Peanuts.
It was peanuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't too pleased with that. So actually, I almost felt boosted to go back and just, if this is how the hustle is out there,
Yeah.
no, I'm sticking to this career. This
Yeah,
is how we're going to,
accounting,
it's stable. We know it's, as you say, debits and credits.
And I guess you also, your dad was in accounting and you had, a clear path. If you were to go there, you knew that at the end of this academic journey, I'm not going to be unemployed. Probably you have a place to go, and so you have that experience. You as an extra, and you don't like it so much so that you're thinking, you know what, this is maybe counting numbers and money is my thing. What turned it around?
Yeah, what turned it around? So, I sat, well, I think just a few months after that experience with the movie, I got a call back. Well, not even a call back, not a call back. It was totally unrelated. I had an agent.
Oh, at this time you had an agent?
At some point I got an agent. This was to just make extra student money. Yeah? Like, you go out there and you find jobs to do as students,
Annet,
right?
Annet, if I may. So this is, you have to help me understand this because a lot of us do not understand how the film world works. So you had that experience, you go back to school. How then did you decide that, you know what, there's an opportunity here to make extra money as a student, but there's certain steps I need to make, including maybe getting an agent, who will help you, find roles and whatnot. How did it happen?
Totally even unrelated to the first experience.
Mm.
So it's a series of very seemingly random moments,
Mm.
but again, the thing calls you.
Yeah.
But a friend was into fashion. So I think there was exposure to so many other industries that are vibrant in economies such as South Africa.
Mm.
So I had a housemate that was a fashion designer who was actually going to school for this and becoming a professional designer. So these fashion designers would often use models. And at that time, I thought I could give it a try. So I got an agent for modeling. And the modeling was not just fashion modeling, but TV advertisement models were needed quite often. So I signed up with an average agency, like good enough, to allow me the opportunity to see where this would take them as well. And sooner or later, they called me for a gig. And guess what? It was Hotel Rwanda again.
Again, my goodness.
Yeah.
It was really calling you, eh?
For a reason. But I got onto what is the post-production phase. Now, film has very broadly, 3 phases: pre-production, production, and post-production. What people would know as editing, the editing phase is post-production. Okay. So here I am, an extra on a random day of filming, which is the production phase. And many months later, here I am in a studio like this, a soundproofed booth, well, pretty big actually, and we're doing what they call, now that I know, ADR, additional dialogue recording. Now, when you watch a movie, most Hollywood movies do not go on set or take audio from the scene. Many times they will call back the actors and redo their lines in a soundproofed, very controlled environment for just crisp, clear sound.
Interesting.
So that's what they called actors to do. My agent said, there's a project. Do you speak Swahili? Because you say you're from East Africa. Yeah. Okay, I have a job for you on Monday. Spent the same amount of time when I did the extra work. The first time when I was, the 10 hours. But this time around, we got paid, say, 10 times more money. And we got to see what was playing back from scenes from the movie. And we would get instructions from the producer and director. So we're in very close proximity to the big bosses of the film. And we were about a handful of people, 10, maybe 5 men and 5 women. So it was a whole experience, so much richer than a lot of experiences I've had even in this time of being a filmmaker. Yeah, that was real Hollywood trenches, but good trenches. It was, So coming to your question, how that turned around is many months later, it gets nominated for an Oscar. And I'm looking at this and saying, wait a minute, there's a whole industry in and around this kind of story. First of all, when it got nominated is when I came to understand what this movie, the story about the movie. I think you only get bits and pieces when you're involved that way as maybe a lower level actor or technician. You don't have the script, you don't know the premise, you don't have the synopsis, you don't have the big picture. But now it's nominated, there's a trailer out. You've got just a bigger idea, and you think this was a big, big operation. The budgets start to come out in the PR, and you realize this is big. How do people get in this business? Is there a way to professionalize this? And happens that my next door neighbor was a film student, and I never understood what he used to make music videos and that kind of thing as a side gig. Actually, he ended up doing a lot of the Ugandan music videos that were so popular around that time. So he told me about the school he attended and thought maybe one day this might be interesting. Maybe I could do a short course while I do my accounting. Yeah, but that's how this built up. At some point, accounting stopped to make sense. I really asked myself, can you really, 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 really do this for the rest of your life? And there was no answer, and that was a scary place to be. Because, you know, your reason to be, you wake up and you do life. So that was not good enough for me. And it took another journey to start having these conversations with parents, with my parents,
I mean, they're the ones who probably funding your lifestyle, your schooling. You know, they've had certain aspirations for you. What was that conversation like?
Not easy, but I think it was very defining for everyone involved. Defining about generational, you know, expectations or experiences. And this is only now in hindsight. At that time, you're just getting through it, you know. But looking back, having had conversations with my parents, you know, and they've seen this journey unfold, in the end, it's definitely worth having taken that course. But course of action, or, you know, and getting their support, but it was definitely challenging for everyone to accept.
But obviously they did.
Yeah, they did. In the end, there's a happy ending.
So now I can imagine you've had that conversation with your parents. They've agreed, let's support you with this. But obviously you're now walking into a totally different space, a space that you have no great knowledge of. What was that time like? You know, first class, and then ingesting all this new information, and then going through year one, year two, and then till the graduation. Take us back to that time.
Let's talk about how I got into film school. Again, this called me in because I got, I had a friend who said, I'm coming to South Africa and I need to enroll into a film school. I still wasn't sure it was film. I knew it was in the storytelling space, whether it's in advertising, marketing, communications, that, theater even, and then maybe film. Still unsure. And he was a colleague from the Rwanda Cinema Center, Thierry. And I said, yeah, sure. I've heard there's a film school in Pretoria, but I don't know if it's all that, you know. But I know, let's give it a try. I'll go there first thing, you know, next week, Monday morning, and see if I can enlist you for an interview for the new intake. Got there, and I thought to myself, why not enroll myself? And guess what? He ended up not going to that particular school, ended up coming to Rwanda and becoming a big-time photographer. And I ended up in that school, in that program. Out of 60 potential students that were interviewed in that particular the initial interviews, 2 of us, Thierry and I included, were the only 2 given immediate admission letters. I do not know what it was, but I think Rwanda was still appealing. There was something still charming about
Yeah.
Rwanda, I
They
don't
wanted,
know.
maybe wanted to
They,
uplift us,
maybe, I
these
don't know if
poor
it's
people
out of
who've gone through
mercy.
this.
Maybe. Oh, that's a sad way to look at it. No, I believe
Or maybe you were extremely
we
talented
yeah,
and
I
they
like to
saw
think
your
that.
potential.
But we had also interned at Eric Kavera's center. So we knew something. And maybe compared to so many others, maybe we outdid them, you know? So he ended up not even taking on the admission, got there, but the first 3 years were grueling. Because here I am, a bit older than the classmates. They're all coming fresh from high school. I've had some academic ghosts, still haunting me. I still wanted to prove that I could complete, whatever was left of the accounting studies, and do it simultaneously, and maybe in the end graduate with 2 degrees, But it wasn't going to happen. I kept wanting to quit every year of that course, but to just finish with a certificate, a first year certificate, because there's something about maybe an artistic mind is you think you don't need academic that much academic to invest that much academically. It didn't make sense, but again, there's a reason I had to go through all that. In the end of the day, today, I'm glad that my father encouraged me literally to complete it all the way to a degree level, which was so rare. Even those that started with us in first year to get to fourth year, I think we were 10.
Wow.
Yeah, out of 40. And they only took 40 students per intake. It was it's the oldest film school in South Africa. So again, it felt privileged to be the last 10 to do this.
The survivors.
The survivors. But I think I didn't understand the value of it, but wisdom. My dad said, you know what, you finish. Whatever it takes, finish, Don't give up. And I thought it was a bit, I wondered how odd it was that I wasn't feeling, I wanted this, but even when, and the biggest lesson I would give to young people out there is, even when it's a passion, it's not always fun. Yeah. Passion is not necessarily fun. Fun,
Yeah.
But it's commitment, it's dedication, it's hard work. And I think that's what completing it to the end taught me and gave me some quite good amount of resilience to stay in the career path that I'm in. Yeah.
So now you've been in the industry for 10 or so years, right? So you're quite experienced at this point. You've seen things. Do you ever regret your career decision? Secondly, when you look back at your journey, if it's not too much of a secret, maybe you can share some of the ones that are for public consumption, and keep some of those that you'd want to keep close to you. Could you share some of the good, the high points on the journey, as well as some of the low points?
I think when we talk about the number of years, I like to include my academic years as my academic career, because those were very defining. One, at that point, I was one of 3 people that created a company in South Africa, of course, run and headed by a South African. And as students were, making some good pocket money doing videography work. And we were getting there. We're getting experience as we were students. A high point and a low point in that period of the academic career, I'll get to the now professional career, was we were commissioned by the school to produce a reality show actually between the school and Mnet. So Mnet had an annual student competition, and out of the 3 student projects selected countrywide, one was one I was producing together with my director at that time, Riabetswe Moweti. And the second out of the 3 was in our class as well. And the third was someone out there in Johannesburg. So we were competing to produce the best student reality show. And at that time, this is 2010, there's no reality shows. It's not a thing. It's not a trend.
Sure.
Yeah, because Survivor and all those were so exclusive and very big Hollywood. It wasn't accessible to make reality shows. So we were given mentorship by the producers of Idols South Africa. But I guess South Africa was also getting in there in that reality space. So Mnet was trying to build new talent around this new format that the world was now interested in.
I remember, I think around that time was when we were doing Big Brother Africa as well.
So Big Brother and Idols, and then Survivor, and I think The Bachelorette was in the US. Yeah. Okay. Was it Love Boat or some other ones? Yeah. But there was a handful. It wasn't, people weren't experienced in that area. So we got mentored by the Idol South Africa producers, and we produced a difficult concept. And in the movie business, concept is everything. It can kill you budget-wise and even timeline-wise. We were literally shooting ourselves in the foot, and our producing mentors kept telling me and the director, why did you choose this? I mean, yeah, Mnet gave it to you, but we don't know how you'll pull this off. So it was a reality show based on a train that only launches once a month. And it was based on matchmaking potential couples. And in this 2-hour train journey, we were going to pull off so many segments or sequences within the reality show competitions, as you know the format, and in the end have a winner.
By the time the train ride ends?
Well, by the time the train ride ends, we're now going to the second phase into a mining town, very known for diamond mining. And the producer said, what if the train breaks down? You will not have the budget to reshoot this. So everything was hinged on this train just getting us there, and nothing that could go wrong goes wrong. So we took a huge production risk. But in the end, that was voted, at the end of all this, the best Mnet edit production. And that was, thank you. And that was the most defining project to say, look, you are wrapping up your academic career, launching off into your professional career. It's possible, it's doable, you can make it. Yeah.
And here's the proof.
And here's the proof. In a whole South Africa, we get best production, you know. So there were those kinds of wins that were critical to just, you know, sticking to an otherwise very difficult industry. And at that time, almost non-existent in Rwanda. Almost non-existent. Yeah.
And the low points in academia?
Low point at that was a racist experience. Yeah. Yeah.
With the students?
With a student. During that production, we were working on each other's projects. And, you know, because it's experiential learning, so as much as we are making our own, we go work on theirs and there's them on ours. But there was a way this particular student, who was part of the managers of that project, handled Black students, and everyone saw it. And I remember not knowing what to do. How should I react? Should I lash back? Should I hold back? Should I? But I can say I played a more Rwandan card.
Yeah, yes.
We shall see. And the biggest revenge was the success of our project. Yeah, yeah. The
And
biggest revenge was just staying focused and not letting that get to me.
yeah.
Yeah.
And now let's talk about the professional. You've left academia, now you're in the big cold world.
Mm.
Now let's talk about your success there and some of the lower moments.
Mm. I'll start with the low moment. There've been many lows and many highs. The one that comes to mind is I walk into the office of a big, well-known company in Kigali. This is probably in the early days, coming back to Kigali enthusiastic.
You're going to change the industry.
Not necessarily. I wasn't here to change it. I was here to just play my part, make a movie, a good one, be enjoyed, make some money.
Yeah.
But nothing too, But it's been 2 years working on a script, a feature film. It was titled Uwera, but the writer did not know that we're going to work together, and it was also my middle name. I don't think that's why it attracted me too, but it was the character. It was a coming of age story that we had built. In the end, I got involved in the writing and changed it from a very short 15-minute film to a feature length, and I thought it had potential. As an upcoming producer, I'm like, let's do this. This movie will sell. And we build it in a way that it showcases Rwanda and the city of Kigali in a way that no one had ever done before. Just going back to the reasons why I also got into film, there was a very deep-seated reason to get into film. We were talking about impact when I saw what it did for Hotel Rwanda. I thought, if this is film, and I've seen what South Africans do with audiovisual in selling their country, in branding their country. Brand South Africa at that time was huge. They made the greatest commercials for their country. And I thought to myself, one day I want to make one of those for my country. I want to make Rwanda known through this medium. So coming back to this point, we've written a film, and I believe it's going to showcase the city of Kigali. And there was not much in terms of the skyscrapers we see today.
Obviously,
Yeah.
that was what, 20...
Well, 2013, 14, and there was, what do they call, where there's Equity, the Equity building now, the headquarters for Equity, next to Vumwe.
Hotel,
Pension Plaza. Pension Plaza had just been completed. Yeah. And we thought our actress needs to come to the rooftop, and we do a rooftop scene. And I walk into, we've packaged everything that I studied in film school about how to pitch and get investors. I've packaged this, it's looking good. We've put money and time. It's 2 years of putting off a lot of other things to say this is what will, But I think I learned what many producers in Hollywood, we used to hear people who put their houses on mortgage because they so much believe in a movie, and then it falls flat and they're broke. So I think I took such a risk, a business risk. Went, and this one person almost, I think he but we've since had, yes, Kigali is small. But I walked in and I said, this is our project. Give us 10 minutes of your time and we'll present it to you. We think it's the next biggest thing. And he laughed, like a wahahaha kind of laugh. And I thought, man. So that, looking back, there was a time I had a bit of a pause, and there's a bit of a black hole in that time, in the timeline. And I think that was the impact of someone rejecting you as an artist. They say artists are sensitive. I didn't think I was that much of an artist. But then to get so affected by that reaction, again, in the end, still built my resilience. Still coming back out of that and realizing.
But there was a cost to it.
A cost to
that resilience.
Yes, yeah, real cost. So that was a low. That was a low because I was tired. I was bleeding a lot of money that I had saved. 2 years of, my life, our lives, me and the people that were involved in the background.
If I can, what about the process makes it so long, right? Because you hadn't started shooting, right?
No, that was the pre-production phase.
So why did it? I mean, okay, I guess you're writing the script. What makes it take such a long time?
Okay, so besides
and why does
the
it
script,
need so much money?
So this is what was in the file that I walked into that company with. There was a synopsis. It's a one-page summary of the entire story. There was profiles of our lead actors, motivations about why they will make the movie sell. There was the financials. So we've done the budgeting. We've done cost breakdowns. We've looked at locations. This was a film that was spanning almost maybe 3 of the provinces of Rwanda. We're taking it from the east, bringing it to Kigali, and taking it to the southwest. Where is Karonji?
Now it's in West.
It's in Western, yeah. So there was that kind of vast expose of the country at that time. And so there's all that. There's location profiles. There's even potential sponsorship, benefits and all that. So it had really taken us some time. We had done auditions. We had people like, very interesting. So we had people like Maria Johanna who had said yes to this. Masamba had said yes to this. Gasumoni Atom had said yes to this. Rachel Neza was our lead actress. She'd said yes to this. So it was even now, in all senses, a big production. Yeah, I think all the numbers. But again, I think I was too sensitive. I shouldn't have let that person's wahaha. Yeah. But big lesson to anyone listening to.
I guess maybe it was just the time, right? Because, I mean, we think 2013 is just a decade ago, but sometimes when I think back to that time, it almost feels like a lifetime ago because things have changed so much. I'm sure that if, Annet had appeared in 2023, maybe they would have laughed, but maybe would have laughed and let you present.
Yeah, if it was the Annet today. True. Either way, everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. Perhaps we'll still make this movie. Okay. Yeah, perhaps we'll still make it. Yeah. And so it developed into so many other things, but yeah.
Now let's talk some high points.
So the high point, many high points. High point, there's 2 high points. Yeah. So I go to Los Angeles, Hollywood, California. And it's not necessarily the first time I've been there. I'd been there as a tourist, but this time it was for professional reasons. I needed to up my skills in the industry. There was an opening, there was an executive producers program, literally right under the Hollywood sign was where my classes took place. And there was so much favor there because the mentors that I met there immediately got me into to the Script Writers Guild of America to intern there. They were already getting me into rooms where people like Shonda Rhimes were giving talks. That was short-lived for some technical reasons, and they took me to the Producers Guild of America. Now, I don't know if this was just out of mercy to say this poor African child, how did she arrive here? we really need to make it worth her air tickets.
Yeah.
But but there was a sense of surprise, deep surprise by an African who actually knows and understands our industry. Yeah, they were always in awe. So I end up at the Producers Guild of America, and for 3 months I interned there, or apprenticed there, and someone walks up to me and says, one of the mentors in that particular space says, I'd like to introduce you to Morgan Freeman and his business partner.
Okay.
And I'm
The
thinking,
Morgan Freeman.
yeah.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, but what am I going to pitch to Morgan Freeman? Is it the other project called Wera that they were laughing at? What else am I left with in my little files? And I'm thinking, I actually don't have a project for him. But I didn't voice it, but I never let it happen. Actually, there was a sense of confidence to not take the opportunity. I said, if I'm to meet someone like Morgan Freeman, I will have something very significant for him. But I'm not going to go in front of him as umufana.
Yes.
As a fan.
Yes.
Just
to shake his hand.
No. Yeah. It's not worth his time. It's not worth my time. I don't know. There was something. But there was also a mind space I was in. I think I was so much focused on just the knowledge I was getting. I was more excited about that than the celebrities. At that time, Hollywood was not as impressive to me, just in terms of the eyes of an audience, because there's a perspective audiences have, the celebrities, the lights, the glitz, the glam. But for me, I was behind the scenes. I knew what it took to make a celebrity. Yeah. So, yeah.
You saw them without the makeup.
Yeah, they're like us, the producers, trying to get the next job in our bag.
Yes,
but
just struggling.
yeah, they're also auditioning. So it wasn't as impressive. Maybe he hoped, it's worth my time to do that. So I say, no, if I'm to meet Morgan, it will be under my terms. Yeah, something worthwhile for both of us. But I let that opportunity slide. I was polite about it. I didn't, yeah. Exactly a year later, when Morgan Freeman came to Rwanda, someone from Discovery Channel, a friend of mine, high school friend, called me and said, Annet, I'm now working at Discovery in Los Angeles. Oh, okay, cool. So Morgan Freeman is coming to Rwanda. Can you facilitate us? And in the end, I ended up being his production local producer.
Amazing.
Yeah. So that was a super high. Huge, like that one production took my producing game to the next level. Yeah, it was small in context to them and where they're coming from, but here, that was the kind of exposure any producer would need.
Why was it such a moment for you? What about it?
So many aspects of it. A moment to say that I am trusted to this level. When you're the one processing the entire team that's arriving from the US, this is for the story of us on National Geographics. It's huge stakes. The insurance on Morgan Freeman as a person alone, so that there's continuity to the show. There's no show without Morgan. So just that they're in our hands, me as producer and every other person working to receive them and host them in Rwanda, it was a huge sense of responsibility and trust given to me as a producer. Huge. So it completing that definitely gave me a boost to keep going.
What was your experience with Morgan like?
He's huge. Sometimes too huge that there's literally 3 people before you get to him. Yeah. As much as you're the one facilitating everything, the hotel accommodation, the arrivals and clearances at the airport, liaising with the the people here on the ground in terms of security, in terms of he was literally a guest of Rwanda at that point. He's big. So I can't say I had one-on-one conversation with him even with that opportunity, but we were in the same rooms at any one particular time. He had hair, makeup, and wardrobe on him. He had his security team, security detail, armed security detail. He had, so it's just to tell you the layers of people around him. Yeah. But our job and my job was to make sure this project arrives in Rwanda, this project leaves safely. Yeah. Having executed what was in the production plan. So the stories he wanted to tell, we had to make sure that those are actually executed and done well.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you've given us, your Morgan Freeman moment. Big, 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 big. That's amazing. And you've also kind of given us the hard moment, right, with the disappointment. Um, but thankfully, when you have, it's been a lot more positive. It seems like the positives by far outweigh the negatives that you've experienced. And one of the positives that I thought that you'd mention before Morgan Freeman, obviously, was what you did in 2019. Um, the fact that you were co-executive producer of a movie that I've watched and I've loved, called The 600. I, to be honest, it was one of those movies. I had never watched something that was actually produced by us, filmed by us, and stories about us that I felt that I'd watch. Right, some of them, the Shooting Dogs, the Hotel Rwanda. I was like, you know what, that is a bit too close to me, you know. But versus that story about the 600 brave young men um, who were stationed in CND, which is now the parliament, and what they had to do to stop the genocide that was happening um, in 1994, and their roles and the way you really humanize them, I thought was amazing, and it was a big deal for me, but not just for me. I think even the president himself was at the premiere, so job well done.
Thank you.
Yes. So I have two questions here. First, what what about the project drew you to it? What about that story of the 600 drew you to that? And secondly, you were co-executive producer. You have to understand that the vast majority of us do not know whether the producer, co-producer, executive producer, what they really do. So maybe you'll help us understand what role you actually played in bringing that story to life. So we'll start with the first question.
I was hoping we could start with the second question.
Oh, okay, no problem.
I have a reason for this. Maybe coming to why and how we even ended up producing is hinged on the title, the role, and everything. A co-executive producer, an executive producer, you'll see that credit a lot. They are many times either an investor or an extremely invested producer. You have producers who can just be project managers, commissioned by an executive producer to make that project happen. So with joining this project as an executive producer, I also had another title as producer, It's just not in the credit sheet.
Mm.
Why I chose to have the one over the other is that I thought at that point I've gotten to a point where projects like these need a different type of involvement from me, not just as a manager of client projects. So many times I've been hired as a producer for hire. So in this particular case, it was a mix of both. I had managerial responsibility to the project, but I also had a say, a big say in the direction of the project, meaning as a local filmmaker, I opened up accesses to my other counterparts who are American to areas and places and offices and spaces that I was more familiar with, you know, to make the project happen. And this project, remember, came a few years after Rwandan Told Story, the BBC production that became very controversial, and the kind of unethical things that sometimes, in my own opinion, that have caused a sense of mistrust in terms of when productions are coming through. At that point, things were still very raw. When this project was launching, it was then critical that we prove our credibility in one handling such a story. We prove that we can, credibility and delivery, you know, of the story and our story. And good enough, my co-executive producer, Richard Hall, he understood this story also at a very personal level. His family, he's married to a Rwandan living in Los Angeles. They actually met there. The time I told you I went to Los Angeles, I met Richard there at that point. And this actually didn't just come out of nowhere.
Okay.
We knew each other through his wife. She happens to be a relative as well. She was hosting me when I did my internship in Hollywood. So they met, or those budding romance at that time. Let's just say that. So by the time, now coming to the first question, by the time we get to hosting this couple, Richard and Madudu, in Kigali, I take Richard and our uncle to CND, to the parliament, for this museum tour. And the museum was just 1 week old or so.
The
Campaign Against Genocide Museum. So first impression for Richard and I was, someone needs to make a movie about this. He asked me, has anyone made a movie about the 600? I said, what I know is there's been a lot of talk about making a movie, but I've never seen anything coming out of this. And that's how the discussion started. Yeah. Yeah.
And so what about the 600 just made you think, okay, I need to invest my precious time, my precious resources in this story?
If I can take you back to that moment, those defining moments of that helped make a decision to go into film, there was the understanding that film is powerful when I saw what it did for this medium, what it did for the movie Hotel Rwanda at that time. Of course, not understanding also the repercussions that that film in particular would have over the course of time, or the personalities, or what, but still there was the sense of power of film. Then there was the deeper understanding that I'd also received during that program in Hollywood, but there was also a sense of, I need to tell Rwanda's story every opportunity I get. And this was a huge opportunity to encapsulate a moment
Mm.
in time, a moment in history. And I was not going to turn away from that, as difficult and as challenging as it was definitely going to become.
And do you feel that the vision that you had for the movie, you know, when you were putting everything together, do you feel like your vision came into life?
Initially, yes,
Mm.
and way after the premiere, no.
Mm. What
So
happened?
initially, definitely, we were getting access to so many stories. We actually pre-interviewed. What you see on screen,
Mm.
those are 25 out of 50 interviews we took.
Mm.
And those 25 are 25 out of 90 pre-interviews we did.
Mm.
Just to tell you that there was so much more to that story and so many voices behind that story than we were able to put in a 2-hour film.
Mm.
So initially, we encapsulated what we could in 2 hours, a feature-length film. But later on, now that it's like we opened Pandora's box. Now, people would approach us, this happened and this happened, and people were excited about such a project, and now more stories were emerging. And I came to understand the liberation struggle so much more deeply after this 1-year journey of the film, that I would look back and think how much more richer this film would be if I also knew a bit more, if I had so much of the context I was getting after it was released. So there's so much more to the 600 film than just the 2 hours that you saw. Yeah.
What are the chances that we get to see some of the content that you shot that you did not use?
Yeah, chances are high. Chances are high. Can't go to waste. Yeah.
No, I mean,
So I'd say between Richard Hall and myself, there's been conversations about how to package all the other interviews. Yeah, and just see how to get those out to the audiences.
and I think that's so important because when we think in terms of Rwandan storytelling, we're put in this box of conflict, displacement, violence. But that story that you were able to showcase told it a different story, a more nuanced story. Um, I want to ask you, but I guess you've already given me the answer. I was going to ask you, like, what are you doing, or what do you plan to do as a filmmaker to show this world, the world that will put us in this box, um, the vibrant Rwanda that is that now plays host to the great and the good of the world, a vibrant Rwanda that is full of amazing people that have stories that have love lives and um, love sports and love family and you know the kind of stories that are normal, right? Instead of it always being genocide and conflict and black pain. There's also a lot of black joy, African joy, Rwandan joy. Um, so I just kind of wanted to ask, are you thinking of, showcasing some of those stories as well?
Halfway through my career, I thought I'd love to make as different genres and formats of films, but at this stage where I am, I think I've had a bit of this and that here. I've experienced making a reality show as a producer. I've written a couple of documentaries, worked on a fiction film, a big one actually, that is set to be released 2024 most likely.
Really?
Yeah.
What is it a secret for you? Like,
Yeah,
do you
well,
have a name for
yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Is it
Uh,
where?
So I was a producer for hire, this one, and
Mm-hmm.
it's called Africanda.
Mm.
And my executive producer is called Tariro Washe.
Mm-hmm.
She's Zimbabwean, and I
Okay.
think it is probably the most ambitious African film production that I have been involved in, or many of us who worked on
Mm.
it will ever be involved in. At
Mm.
least I feel like it's groundbreaking in so many
Mm.
ways. Yeah,
And it's coming out
yeah,
next year.
most likely.
And it's based in Rwandan local characters.
It's filmed in Rwanda and Zimbabwe.
Okay.
Um, as I was saying, at some point in any producer's career is to try and have all these forms of, you know, expression in terms of genres. And this is an Afrofuturist film, fiction as it gets,
So
you know.
another Black Panther.
No, Star Wars meets maybe Wera.
Yes.
But no, well, no. You will see.
Okay.
Yeah. The teaser is out.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
So the team is working very hard, and yeah, I am yet to meet an executive producer who is as passionate a Pan-Africanist as Tariro. Yeah. Like literally watch the space for her as a filmmaker.
Okay.
Yeah. So halfway through, I think these are the blessings that came with saying yes to the industry, was experiencing such a project. So we've come from reality to documentaries to fiction, Afrofuturist subgenre, and thinking, what next? And at this point, why I say no is, you know, we'll watch the space as we keep going, right? But I think I want to go back to telling just Rwandan stories in a context, in a global context, in an African context, but still doing as much work to get all these untold stories out. And a big part of it will still involve a history that's also not so warm. And I've met people who have listened to my career journey, and when I got to the 600 and got that released, there was a sense of, so will you always make genocide related stories? And there was a sense of, no, I'm a diverse, I can produce pretty much any genre, any story, any theme, any, you know. But looking back, I'm going back to that moment I said yes to the industry. That I think there's still stories about very dark moments in our history where the greatest light for the world is. And I feel that's what 600 was about. We took people to a very dark place. I literally remember seeing all the people that were bringing into the interview room and thinking, my God, we're going to open them up. And I pray that we sew them back. Like, may God give us the grace to sew back the hearts that we're about to open up now. And also for the audience that will be watching this, there's a deep sense of responsibility when you're telling such a story. But you hope that people will go through this and come out at a higher place, at a higher plane. And I think the film, from the feedback we get, it did take people to a dark place, but it also shows the light Rwanda is.
No, it really shows, I think, the best of us as well.
Yeah, so much. So there's no way to almost tell that story, today's story of Rwanda, without going back. Yeah, it's hard, and you always see it with every vlogger now that comes to tell Rwanda. So I was watching Steve Ndeku's vlog, the one that he does about every country, and he does this thing that every filmmaker, vlogger does. You know, they go and they start, but in Rwanda 1994, and it's to give context. But again, in that context, yeah, once you go there, I know people who have worked in the memory, their careers are built on Rwanda's memory, meaning they've dedicated a good part of their careers to preserving the memory. So I think I might
That might be
focus
your
on that.
lane.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
might just
there's,
be unashamedly. It's as much as someone say, "Will you always make genocide-related films?" And I feel no,
I
maybe
mean,
that's just where I should
I
be.
guess the question then becomes, if not you, then who?
Then who?
Yeah.
Yeah, someone else will go make more reality shows and fiction and what. But I mean, opportunities always come. You get into such projects. But I think, yeah, I'm getting focused on this.
My last question to you is, a bit futuristic. When you look 10 years into this industry, what do you imagine it to become? Whether it's, I guess, for you as a filmmaker, but then the entire sector um, as well. And last question. So my demographic, the people that listen to this podcast, there's a lot of from 20 to mid 30s. So a lot of the people that you could call a youth. Would you tell our listeners who are now in that fork in the road? Maybe they are in high school, right? Or they've graduated high school and or they are in first year, but there's something pulling them into filmmaking. Would you advise them with the wealth of knowledge that you now have to embark on the same journey that you embarked all those years back?
Well, and that will be the last question that I answer. So I come back to the top with the in 10 years, what I envision this industry, I envision the film industry on the continent contributing largely to the GDP of the continent. I was listening to some reports online about CANX. This is a continental summit that usually brings the best of and talks about the upcoming projects. And Afrexim Bank, under the ADB, announced that they are channeling, is it 2 billion US dollars into, if I'm not wrong, 2 billion into the African film industry. So I think we increasingly are now needing to look as Africa and not Rwanda, looking at the industry at that level. An example is with the film that we just shot at the early part of this year, Africanda. I think it was already in line with what's happening on the continent. We had to handle technicians from 8 countries coming together, about 7 to 8 countries coming together to make this film in Rwanda and in Zimbabwe, the best of the best. Our DP, he was Snoop Dogg's music
What's
video. Sorry. So a DP is a director of photography.
Okay.
He's the chief cameraman. He's the guy that gives you the image and the look. So he made Snoop Dogg's first video, music video, back in the day.
Yeah.
He's a legend. And he's still working in this industry. He's from Senegal. So big shout out to him. And then so many people that flew in. At any one time, we had a unit. We call them units. This is the drove of technicians and actors in every department: catering, hair, wardrobe, makeup, from Zimbabwe, Kenya, Uganda, Senegal, Nigeria, Rwanda. At any one point, we were managing 80 plus people. We would take over a street in Kigali like this.
Yeah.
And that's what Hollywood movies do. They shut down streets. And there's just huge, the funding for such, every day you're looking at about $10,000. That's a low budget film in Rwanda. I mean, in Hollywood context. At any one point, if you lose your day, you're losing 10 million Rwandan francs in such a set. And you're working for so many days and weeks. So when you hear that $2 billion are going to be pumped into the industry, you're looking at, this is just now, this is probably piloting, it's a pilot phase of a bigger fund to come. Where will we be in 2050? The young people now, the high schoolers you're talking about, and I think I'll just mix the
Yes, please.
the answer to the two questions. The high schooler, the college person in say 2050, that's about another 25 years to come. They'll be in the mid 40s, early 50s. They'll be the kings of industry. So who will be the kings of industry in the film industry at that time? It's the young people listening to your podcast today. I would say to them, if we're going to have a share of this pie, understand Africa better, understand that our story is also not unique to us alone, understand the universality of the stories we are telling. People are paying attention to the Rwandan story. They will even do more as we go into the future. Be very conscious of what you're studying today. You mentioned something behind the scenes that every person's journey is different. But if I could ask them to join a type of journey, I would say you're graduating high school, yes. Granted, you might not even know what you really want, or you might, depending. But there's no waste in a first degree, in whichever it is. I think I'm the producer I am today because I had that journey into finance. Yeah, I know people who are producers today, but looking back and thinking, I wish I had a bit of a finance course or, sense. And it makes me fearless with numbers and general management, because in the end of the day, film is a business. It's dollars and cents. It's debits and credits. And to make this an industry that's worth reckoning is we have to look at the dollars and cents. That $2 billion coming from that bank is not going to just go to passion. Your bills will be paid by those dollars and cents, but you really have to prove yourself. So whatever course you take, whatever journey you take, if you find yourself in law right now, finish your law degree. That's a commercial law you'll need when you're dealing with contracts and everything later on as a producer. You'll need that kind of language, legal language. You will be a different type of producer with that background. So I'd say take what you're doing in every moment in life seriously. Yeah, I wish I had listened more to my father and said, let me focus, finish this, and maybe even get into film as a master's. It's okay. It would have worked out as well. Yeah. So anyway, when you're young, you're young.
But that's the beauty of being young. You have time to pivot.
Well, there's so much more things we could have done in that time.
And with that, that's the end of this time. Thank you so much for joining me this week.
Thank you. Thank you, Sunny.
It was an absolute pleasure.
Asante.